Welcome to today's breakdown with Rick Travis, Director of Development, Kevin Small, Advocacy and Outreach Manager, and we're going to be talking with all of you out there about the role of a sheriff and how a sheriff, a single person that we elect, can change the demographics of an entire region. We're honored today to have a good friend of the California Rifle Pistol Association and obviously the people of Riverside County, Sheriff Chad Bianco, today on the breakdown. In the last segment, we were talking about some things that we want to unpack, and one of those is you are the constitutional, everything for the county of Riverside. That position has an incredible responsibility that I don't take lightly, and you've been under attack, and I know Kevin's going to get a little bit more aggressive in this part of the segment, so I'll just kick it open with you guys. I'll just be totally frank. I do not trust anything that comes out of the majority of newspapers in your county, Sheriff. I kind of look at, to be quite honest, Phil's probably going to clap when I say this, but I never thought I'd live to see today that Pravda had a home office here in the United States, but obviously the Press Enterprise is the equivalent of Pravda during the Soviet Union. And for those of you who don't get the reference, that was the national newspaper that lied to the people of the Soviets all the time. They have come after you because of something that happened in the mid 2010s, I think around 2014, I think was the time period. And there was a group that was showing up at lots of gun shows, lots of fairs, places where there were no firearms, called Oath Keepers. And the appeal at that time from Oath Keepers was to anybody that was former law enforcement, former fire service, former EMS, or current in those positions, active duty military, veterans, with the concept that all those people, men and women, take an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And it's an oath that a lot of people that don't take it don't realize it has no time limit until you die. I mean, that's basically the time limit. I'm gone. And so their appeal was, did you believe in America enough that you would stand on that oath that you took, or were you just saying words? And so a lot of us, me included, I'll go on and say it, I signed and said, yeah, I would. Totally, I still do. I do it every day in the job that I'm in. And Kevin and I talk about that. And that has somehow been twisted into, because allegedly, and I'm going to say it because nothing's been proven, there was an individual or a couple of individuals that happened to have also signed that document along with millions of other American citizens. And now they're trying to tie them to terrorism, and therefore you must be a supporter of that, if not one yourself, which is, to me, just a lie and reprehensible.
Yeah. Kevin and I, we were talking earlier about the, lie and the word lie and that we're being lied to so often. And lie is a big word, and we're afraid of that because it has this terrible connotation. You don't want to be called a liar. But when you say misinformation or when you say dishonest, somehow that's acceptable. If you're being dishonest, that's acceptable. And I read a poll. It was a little while ago, it was last year, that the majority of voters believe that politicians are dishonest, and that's okay. How is that okay? They're liars. And we are unfortunately right now being forced a lot of information from media, from social media, from print, from TV, from our phones, from our apps, that they want you to believe their agenda. They want you to believe something that isn't necessarily true. And what I will tell you that is true about Oath Keepers is if you read the website, if you go on their website, don't go on Wikipedia. That's not a real definition. That's not a real information site. If you go on their website, which I'm sure I did in 2014, and or saw them in some type of gun fair or something. When you look at the information, when I began in 1993, I raised my hand and I swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the U.S. and of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Same oath as a military, same oath as the president, same oath as the governor, same oath as every politician that we have. I didn't swear an oath to a person. I didn't swear an oath to a government. I didn't swear an oath to an entity, a political ideology, nothing. It was to this country, and what makes it great is our Constitution. And
Amen.
when you read their website, when it talks about what it talks about, and I mentioned Kevin to this earlier, if you go on the ACLU's website and you look at the about section about what they're about, it's relatively the same thing that the Oath Keepers website says. And they're supposedly supposed to be for the constitutional rights of everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's best to understand that this is typical media low-hanging fruit, right? Something bad happened. I don't know too many people who would refer to the incident on January 6th as something that wasn't bad, right? So then they connect some affiliated group to that, which may mean one person who was a member of the Oath Keepers may have been there. So then they can attribute blame to every single person. I think the fact of the matter is we want our politicians to uphold the Constitution. We want people to keep that oath. And I think it's extremely disingenuous by the media, although that's not saying much these days because it happens all the time. I think we're all aware of that. To kind of spin it this way, but we too often, sit in these very chairs and talk about how our politicians are breaking their oaths. Fact of the matter is I want you to uphold our Constitution because Rick was right. You are the last line of defense here, and there's a lot of grumbling within the conservative market these days because there's not enough action. And I think that we're seeing action in Riverside, and I just want to say I'm actually very appreciative of it. That is exactly what needs to happen. But to try and attribute blame to somebody in California for something that happened in D.C. is completely, like you said, it's a lie. It's dishonest. And the fact of the matter, and so I'm just curious. You've already kind of said, it is your purpose to uphold that Constitution. Holding that in high regard, you got to continue and move forward with that, right? That's not something that you can just change.
Absolutely. So with that, the big picture surrounding this whole thing and the issue with them trying to somehow discredit me for my 2014 $40 membership of the Oath Keepers, I am unbelievably proud of the oath I took. I know the importance. I know the significance, and I will, till my dying breath, I will uphold our Constitution and the rights of every single citizen out there that our Constitution guarantees to. And it unfortunately, I mean, you don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. You don't want to be, the guy that or gal that is just scares everybody with their thoughts and their statements. But in the end, the Constitution protects against government. The Constitution protects its citizens from government. And it's funny that the current government is who's upset with me. They're upset with me because of their agenda. I'm not supporting their agenda. That's not my role. My role is to support the Constitution. I'm proud of that. I will always continue to do that. There was a very well esteemed attorney that ran the Bar Association for Riverside County. He retired, but he's no longer the president, but he wrote an article last year before COVID really came into effect, and it may have even been in 2018, beginning of 2019. And it was about the oath, and it was that people have forgotten what the oath is, and he wanted my opinion. He interviewed me for what the oath meant to me. And it was interesting that this was going on back then, and some attorneys, we obviously have different political ideologies in the way we think, but we're talking about the oath. We aren't talking about political ideologies. We're talking about an oath, and what does it mean to you, and are you going to respect it, and are you going to honor that? And I'm very proud of it, and so I will. You say low hanging fruit. They're making it a big deal because I'm very vocal against things that I think are wrong, that are against the rights of Americans, and so they have to discredit me. They have to come at me. If they're coming at me because of my oath to the Constitution, well, they got a good fight on their hands, because I'm not backing down. I'm certainly not going to be bullied by them into saying that I did something wrong. I didn't. I had nothing to do with that. It's interesting. We have politicians that commit crimes all the time. We have politicians that should be in prison, that are in prison, but they don't want to be labeled like that. We don't want to say all politicians are criminals, but they want to say that because a couple people were supposedly associated with this group, everyone associated with it is. I think that the majority of Americans see through that. They see what it is. and I don't think it's the big deal that the left, the extreme left, is trying to push with my membership in that organization. That was in 2014. I haven't done anything since. I actually even forgot about it. I had to search through emails when I started getting questioned about it to make sure, because I originally said, no, I'm not a member of the Oath Keepers. But I certainly agree with that oath and abide by that oath, and I'm proud of it.
We're going to move beyond CCWs and constitutional protections to talk about some other things that are going on here in the Golden State and nationwide that, again, it is your local sheriffs that are banding together to hold the line. And that line happens to come on illegal immigration. Before we started the show, Sheriff Bianco, you and I were discussing, I mean, we obviously have good people from other countries trying to come here to the United States. There's a lot of good people. We also have some not so good people trying to snake across all of our borders. We even have people like I've talked about that we deal with with Fish and Wildlife, and the CRPA's work with them, that are setting up illegal. They're from the cartels. They're armed. They're in military outfits. They use military methods. They do punji traps and all sorts of stuff throughout California. I call that invading force. Our governor tends to look the other way on that. We could probably do a whole show on that alone. But tell me, how are you feeling? Because we had a wall and we had a system that was being built by the previous presidential administration, and now we have a complete 180 free-for-all at the border. Is that impacting resources here in Riverside County? Is that causing issues?
Yes, it is. Thankfully, we're not a border county, so we have counties that separate us from the actual U.S. border. But we are so close on both of them that we are impacted. We have border check stations that are in our county, outside of their county. That there's one coming into the country. There isn't one in San Diego County, but when you get into Riverside, then there is one. So we are impacted, and there's a lot going on that we're having to deal with now. The county resources, not necessarily the sheriff's department, are being taxed with those people coming across that are being brought in from Arizona and from San Diego that are being brought into Riverside County, and we are having to take care of them or facilitate their movement through the rest of the country. So we are dealing with it. It's not as bad, thankfully, as what you would expect or what you would think. We're managing fine. For a law enforcement perspective, we're having to deal with it on huge levels. And it's not so much the people that we're worried about, it's the crime that comes with it. It's the drugs, it's the human trafficking, it's the cartel movement. I mean, all these people that are overwhelming the border. Border Patrol was taxed before, and we had a hard time keeping the drugs especially from coming across the border. Now, they're so occupied with these, huge numbers of people coming across that are trying to get in. The cartels are it's just free reign. They're just bringing in the drugs. They're bringing in the weapons. They're bringing in, they're smuggling kids in, girls in, men in for human trafficking labor and human trafficking sex. And we're really dealing with it big time here. Our drug seizures are through the roof, with no sign of it stopping. It's getting worse. Our seizures are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more often. We have more guns that are here. We know that they're being smuggled in. We know that they're being brought in, and it's just something that we have to dedicate our resources to for that take away from other things. I mean, we have a certain amount of people that I can deploy, and I have to deploy them where it's best. And right now, the dangers that we're seeing from the drugs and the human trafficking, that's where we have to put our resources.
You and I were talking just before this, and I'm going to let you go, Kevin, on a couple of these items. But one of them, I think people, when they hear drugs, it's like a lot of the words we've been talking about, like lie versus misinformation. I think a lot of our public and those of you out there, driving or listening from home are thinking, oh, drug seizures. And we think more commonly, unfortunately, marijuana. Maybe if you're a little older, you think, oh, that could be cocaine or heroin. But you and I were talking about a horrific drug on the landscape called fentanyl. And if you could share just briefly with the audience how much you guys seized and what the possible toll had you not got to that seizure.
Yeah, there was a couple of weeks ago, there was a seizure here in Riverside County of fentanyl, and the dose of fentanyl is extremely small. The usable, if you want to call it that. The overdose level is also extremely small. We have, just as a side note, we have had to issue all of our deputies Narcan, because we are coming across so many people that are unconscious and going to die should they not get that Narcan. So our deputies are having to issue kids Narcan, even adults. And we would be in the thousands of deaths from poisoning of fentanyl. And recently we had a seizure in Riverside County, and when you break down that dose of what they took, the overdosage to overdose could have caused 51 million deaths. That's enormous.
Yeah.
That's enormous. And could it be used as a weapon? Absolutely it could, and we have to be concerned about that. People should be concerned about that. Our government should be concerned about that.
But they're quiet.
Right now they're not.
Yeah.
It's just something that's one of those things, the misinformation, the disinformation, what they don't want you to know. They only want you to know what they tell you. And then we're not even sure if that's really accurate.
Well, I think that this is really interesting because what you're talking about are consequences of illegal immigration. I think it's really unfortunate within the political sphere. This argument seems to be being made on two different pages. You have one side of the argument that's arguing the humanization of these people coming over, and you have the other side saying, hey, look, there are some real consequences here. I'm really curious, being a county sheriff's department, is this something that you communicate with the state government or even the federal government? And if not, are you just basically, there and they have told you this is our policy, you're left to deal with it?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because there's two fronts there. Our state government, there is zero communication. They couldn't care less. They couldn't care less. They've made California a sanctuary state, they've made it illegal for me to even ask someone if they're here illegally or not. It's ridiculous. But because we are large, I am a member of the Major County Sheriff's Association of America, and we have a group of sheriffs that are border committee that deal with Homeland Security and DHS and on a routine basis. And so we are discussing those issues and those problems that we are in dialogue with the government. Those individual agencies are great to work with. The unfortunate part is they're controlled by the administration, and so their hands are tied also. But yes, they know of our concerns. Yes, they know of the issues that we're dealing with, and it's just trying to navigate through an administration that, like California, doesn't necessarily care. They're painting it as a different picture.
As members of the audience who tune in all the time to Firing Line Radio, we try to give everybody something that they can have as a takeaway that can help keep them and their families safer with all these issues coming up and with the politicization of everything that we say and do. What would you tell a listener in this last couple of minutes would be something that you would tell like a family friend, hey, you need to do this or be aware of this to protect you and your family?
That's a good point. That's a good thought process. Where we are now, if there's one thing that came out of COVID that I think is a good thing, or where we're going right now, is that people became more aware of their surroundings. They became more aware of their neighbors. They became more aware of their neighborhoods, and they started talking with their neighbors where they really didn't know who they were, myself included.
Right.
And I think that what that does is that it opens up that dialogue for those relationships to be able to protect each other. Mm-hmm. So now people know who their neighbors are. They know who belongs in that neighborhood, which kids are supposed to become visiting other kids in the neighborhood, right. And you can protect them. You can protect yourselves. I think that also with the political climate the way it is we're good people are good people. We don't want conflict. We don't want enemies. We just want to get along. We want to worry about ourselves, take care of ourselves, and just make things good. And I think we've been taken advantage of. So with us getting to know our neighbors now, paying more attention in our neighborhoods, and starting to speak up, I think there's a big movement right now of people are saying enough is enough, and we need to get control again. What I'm seeing is a lot of people becoming more serious about their political elections, about the consequences of not engaging, the consequences of I don't vote because my vote doesn't count. Well, it certainly doesn't count when there isn't one. Right. And I think people are realizing that now. So I think that what we really need to do is we need to start caring about our local elections. Judges are a huge one, huge election that nobody knows. Nobody knows which judge to vote for. Right. And school boards are huge. Even the local city elections, we need to get involved. We need to make our voices be heard. The silent majority has to become the vocal majority so we can right these things.
Couldn't agree more. And on that positive note, remember, as we always say at CRPA, there's only two votes: voting for what you believe in or voting for the other side. And not voting is voting for the other side because you gave them an advantage.
You know, there's lots of positives and negatives in the California legislature, but you know what's always positive? A like on this video. So be sure and like, share, and subscribe. Make sure and hit that little bell so that you can stay tuned for all of our future videos. You can also check us out on Facebook and at crpa.org. If you're looking for up-to-date legislature notes and things that are going on in the courts, the website and these videos are a great place to find it. So be sure and follow us, and we'll see you next time.